says an attack on one NATO territory is an attack on all.
I actually don't send any message to the US. For me, it's actually about defending Greenland and also defending NATO's northern flank. I will say that I will never expect a NATO country attacking another NATO country. But you are right that it is Danish law that a Danish soldier, if attacked, has the obligation to fight back.
President Trump's threats are drawing criticism from both sides of the political aisle on Capitol Hill.
Basically severing this whole agreement and invading an ally, a democracy, it's immoral, it's wrong.
I thought of starting a war or invading it. A NATO ally is a unthinkable.
It's also an unpopular opinion among Americans, according to a new CNN poll. The survey shows that 75% oppose the U.S. attempting to take control of Greenland.
Newsom called Trump's announcement surprising and sovereignty and territorial integrity. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer called the threats wrong, while French President Emmanuel Macron labeled them unacceptable. Swedish Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson said his country would not be blackmailed. Finnish President Alexander Stubb warned that tariffs could damage transatlantic relations. Germany and the Netherlands said they are considering appropriate responses to the U.S. tariffs. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen and European Council President Antonio Costa issued a joint statement. They warned that such tariffs will undermine transatlantic ties and risk a downward spiral. International experts also denounced the U.S.'s policies, saying they violate the UN Charter and erode the global order.
Unilateral American moves are challenging the international order and are really against preserving peace and stability, and joint even global governance is in very much challenged because it is totally breaching every possible UN Charter, international public law, every bilateral, multilateral convention between states. So it's like really the newest or the highest point of the decline of the American hegemony, when it's becoming really aggressive, violent, and totally relentless towards law and other partners. The United States are diminishing the rest of the respect that the rest of the world had for them, because you cannot really respect such a big and important country that is behaving so without any respect for the other countries' interests and for common interests of the humankind.
In other significant news, the Iran Supreme Leader has blamed the White House for weeks of nationwide protests, which have led to several thousand deaths. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei called it a U.S. conspiracy supported by President Donald Trump.
This is a U.S. conspiracy. It is evident that the U.S. has planned and executed this. Drawing on over 40 years of experience, I can assert that their goal is to overthrow Iran. They aim to force Iran back under their military, political, and economic domination. U.S. President Donald Trump personally intervened in these riots. He openly voiced threats and encouraged the rioters, sending messages from the U.S. to incite further destruction. He said, "America stands with you. We will provide you with military support." In other words, the U.S. president is directly involved in this unrest. He is complicit in this crime.
While Washington has stepped back from direct intervention in Iran, tensions across the Middle East remain high. Militia groups in Iraq are warning they would respond forcefully if the U.S. moves against Tehran. Mikhail Bardavid has more details.
On Friday and Saturday, back-to-back anti-U.S. demonstrations took place on the streets of Baghdad. Protesters expressed fury at Washington and solidarity with Iran. One sign read, "We are with you," with Iranian and Iraqi flags intertwined. The voices on the street are echoed by some Iran-aligned militia groups. Harakat Hizbullah al-Nujaba, one of several groups recently designated by the U.S. as a foreign terrorist organization, says it would retaliate if Washington were to intervene militarily against Iran.
This is about managing a broader confrontation. If required, we are fully prepared and ready to stand alongside the Islamic Republic and take part on the front lines in confronting any American aggression.
Others close to the resistance axis in Iraq issued warnings of escalation.
Among the resistance factions, there is currently a position that avoids targeting American interests. But if Iran were to be attacked, God forbid, the response would be clear and the consequences would be serious.
There were also messages of concern for the impact on the region.
Any American intervention in Iran would have far-reaching consequences, destabilizing the entire region politically, economically, socially, and in terms of security. It would plunge the Middle East into chaos, blurring all borders.
Some Iraqis also criticized the United States' recent intervention in Venezuela.
Interference in the sovereignty of states has become a central policy for the United States and Israel. Their interventions in the internal affairs of countries have created chaos and instability across the region.
Though Washington appears to have scaled back talk of direct military action for the moment, the stakes remain high and the potential for wider fallout is far from over. Michal Bar-David, CGTN.
Well, that is it for this edition of The World Today. I'll be back shortly with more news from the continent in Africa Live. Thanks for watching. Supporters of Uganda's President Yoweri Museveni celebrate his election victory, but the opposition cries foul. And Guinea's General Mamadi Doumbouya is sworn in, marking a shift from military to constitutional rule. And Southern Africa braces for more flooding, as authorities say around 200 people have been killed across the region in seasonal rains. Hello and welcome to Africa Live. As always, great to have you with us. I'm Richard Ntal, live in Nairobi. And for those of you joining us from across the continent and around the globe, we thank you for joining us. Let's take a look at other stories making headlines this hour. Coming up in business, we'll see how Egypt is looking to attract more tourists from China. And in sports, we look ahead to tonight's Africa Cup of Nations finals between host Morocco and Senegal. Once again, a very warm welcome to Africa Live. We'll start in Uganda, where longtime leader Yoweri Museveni has been declared the winner of Thursday's presidential elections. His supporters have hailed the victory, saying the 81-year-old, who's held power without a break since the mid-1980s, has brought peace and stability to the East African nation. However, the opposition is crying foul over the electoral process, citing allegations of fraud and a deliberate internet shutdown. CGTN's Sharon Baranga reports.
On Saturday, Uganda's Electoral Commission declared longtime ruler Yoweri Museveni the winner of the country's presidential election, securing nearly 72% of the vote.
The Commission hereby declares the elected president declares candidate Yoweri Museveni the duly elected president of the Republic of Uganda at the presidential elections held on the 15th day of January 2026 for the next 5 years.
The announcement came amid tight security in the capital Kampala, following an election marred by technical delays, violence and accusations of widespread fraud. In the days around the election, there was also an internet blackout across the country. Voting was disrupted by malfunctioning biometric systems, leaving many voters stranded at polling stations. At least 7 people were reported killed in election-related violence. Opposition candidates have cried foul over this, and so have observers.
The mission noted with concern the shutdown of the internet now on day 5. The action has affected citizens' right to receive information, increases freedom of expression, and has also affected the effectiveness of our mission.
Authorities defended the internet blackout, saying it was necessary to prevent what they called the spread of misinformation at a critical time. Despite the controversy, Museveni's supporters took to the streets to celebrate, hailing the 81-year-old for bringing stability to the East African nation.
I'm really very happy and glad seeing that for this time he has won at a higher percentage even compared to what he won with last time. And this victory comes because of his hard work and dedication and commitment towards the people of Uganda. I want him to even reign more until he is exhausted.
Why I support President Museveni is I've been able to get education, and I've got education from UPE schools, that is universal education, up to the end, up to the university.
President Yoweri Museveni is a good leader for 35 years. Since I was born, I've never seen wars in Uganda, and he has brought peace in Uganda. He has built houses for all people have become rich, and all women, they have peace of work. All of them, they are working.
Museveni, who has ruled Uganda since 1986, now begins another 5-year term. However, questions will remain over how he won the election and the state of Uganda's democracy going forward. Meanwhile, with this term expected to be Museveni's last, analysts believe it may be one dominated by an internal battle to succeed him. Sharon Baranga, CGTN.
Meanwhile, the main opposition candidate has claimed in a social media post that he escaped a police and army raid on his home following the election. Bobby Wine, who secured 24% of the vote, was among those to criticize the electoral process and called for protests. A former pop star whose real name is Kaya Gulani said he had managed to evade those who came for him. He did not disclose his current whereabouts. Wine's party, the National Unity Platform, had earlier claimed that an army helicopter landed at his compound in the capital Kampala and that soldiers had forcibly taken him away to an unknown destination. A national police spokesperson denied the claim and told a televised news conference that Wine was at his home and was free to move.
Mr. Kyagulanyi Ssentamu, as far as I'm informed, he's not under arrest. That is one statement I would like to make categorically clear. The deployment around his place, yes, it is visible. But we have deployed in all areas where our intelligence estimates give us a point to such areas as areas of interest. We have controlled access in areas we feel are security hotspots. We have not necessarily denied people from accessing him, but we can also not tolerate instances where people use his premises to gather and cause unnecessary violence or incite violence. So we cannot allow an environment to be used as a springboard for chaos or violence generally.
And to Guinea now, where General Mamadi Doumbouya has been inaugurated as the country's president. Electoral authorities said the 41-year-old won last month's election with more than 85% of the ballots. The military man, who had been operating as an interim president since a 2021 coup, has received a 7-year term. CGTN Sophia Shimachero has more.
Thousands gathered on Saturday at the General Lansana Conte Stadium in Guinea's capital, Conakry, to witness a historic moment for the West African country. General Mamadi Doumbouya officially sworn in as the country's new president, marking the end of a 4-year military transition period. Several African leaders attended the ceremony. It was a memorable day for many of his supporters.
I congratulate President Mamadi Doumbouya. He truly deserves these honors. I have witnessed how the city has changed under his leadership. I know that one day we will be among the best in Africa.
The December 28th vote was the first since Doumbouya deposed the then-President Alpha Condé in 2021. It came months after the country adopted a new constitution through a nationwide referendum. The constitution lifted restrictions on military leaders running for office and extended the presidential term from 5 to 7 years, clearing the way for Doumbouya's candidacy. After taking the oath, Doumbouya reaffirmed his commitment to respect the constitution, pledging to govern with integrity, justice and responsibility. He also noted his mandate will include greater involvement of women and young people in the country's development. His supporters believe the country should get behind his program for government.
As the Ghanaian people, we must support President Mamadi for the next 7 years because he has a vision, he has a program, and he loves his country.
We have a head of state who is determined to unite the sons and daughters of this nation around a single vision, to see a united Guinea, a prosperous Guinea, a Guinea that evolves with transparency and above all with social justice.
Guinea is one of several countries in West and Central Africa to experience a military coup in the past 6 years. All promised a return to civilian rule as soon as conditions were deemed appropriate. Guinea represents, at least on paper, a complete transition following the election. Yet, with the coup leader propelled to power in a landslide, many critics will challenge this assertion. Sophia Shimachero, CGTN.
CGTN's Enoch Sokolia has more now on President Doumbouya and what lies ahead for the West African nation.
Born in 1980, Mamadi Doumbouya hails from Guinea's southeastern region, rising through the ranks of the military. Doumbouya is a career soldier, trained both at home and abroad. He served in elite military units and is widely reported to have received specialized training in France and other countries. Before entering politics, he commanded Guinea's Special Forces. It was this force that would later place him at the center of Guinea's most dramatic political shift in decades. On September 5th, 2021, then Colonel Doumbouya led a military coup that overthrew President Alpha Condé. The takeover came after months of public anger over constitutional changes that allowed Condé to seek a controversial third term. Doumbouya dissolved the government, suspended the constitution, and announced the creation of a military-led transitional government. In his first address to the nation, he justified the coup as a rectification rather than a power grab. He accused the previous administration of corruption, poor governance, economic mismanagement, and erosion of democratic norms, arguing that Guinea's vast mineral wealth had failed to improve the lives of ordinary citizens. After years marked by delays, negotiations, and pressure from ECOWAS and the international community to hold elections, Doumbouya contested the 2025 poll and won. He promised to restore stability and national unity, fight corruption, reform the judiciary and security sectors, ensure Guinea's mineral wealth benefits citizens, not just multinationals, push infrastructure development, and promote youth employment and skills training. Guineans are cautiously hopeful. Supporters see him as a firm hand capable of ensuring discipline and stability. Critics worry about the durability of democratic institutions under a former junta leader. The next 7 years will tell the story. Enoxikolia, CGTN.
And now to southern Africa, where authorities are warning of more heavy rain and intense flooding across the region in the coming days. It comes as officials in South Africa, Madagascar, Mozambique, and Zimbabwe say around 200 people have been killed since the beginning of the heavy rains in October. Zimbabwe has been among the worst hit. Authorities there say 74 people have died, while infrastructure, including schools, roads, and bridges, have been destroyed. South Africa has reported at least 19 deaths in 2 of its northern provinces, Limpopo and Mpumalanga. Mozambique says 103 people have been killed, either directly from the floods or indirectly from causes such as electrocution or disease. 11 people have died in Madagascar. Tens of thousands of people across the region have had to evacuate their homes and seek temporary accommodation elsewhere. Experts put the increased intensity of the rains down to climate change in a region which regularly suffers from lengthy droughts. Time now for a short break. We shall reset and return with more Africa Live. Here's what's ahead. Coming up after the break is Africa, bearing the brunt of the extremist violence across the world. Welcome back to Africa Live. Thanks for staying with us. In South Sudan, many communities battered by conflict, floods, and economic hardship are finding new hope. A UN initiative which provides small business training and vocational support is helping young people identify their passions and build new careers. The program's organizers say they hope by providing employment and opportunity, they can keep young people active and away from crime and armed gangs. CGTN's Joy Krukijuma has the details.
In Lear County in South Sudan's Unity State, survival is a daily struggle. Years of conflict, climate shocks and economic collapse have left communities with few opportunities to provide employment. A recent needs assessment shows more than 90% of villages face food shortages, with floods, livestock disease and insecurity compounding the crisis. Against this backdrop, the United Nations mission in South Sudan, UNMISS, says it's supporting income-generating activities aligned to local market needs. The program provides startup capital, business skills and financial literacy, helping vulnerable groups build resilience and reduce the risk of young people being drawn into violence.
The reason many youth resort to cattle raiding and other criminal activities is unemployment. The training we have received can help rehabilitate young people into productive members of society. My message to young people is simple. Be proactive. If you want to fish, do it. If you want to farm, do it. Let us stop following those who thrive on division and bloodshed.
Participants are organized into small groups based on vulnerability and shared skills. They receive tailored business training and are linked with experienced mentors to help turn ideas into sustainable livelihoods.
Before, we did not know how to save our money because most of us lacked business skills. Now the beneficiaries understand how to save and manage their income. The program is changing our means of survival, and women have been empowered. Many more people want this training because they see the transformation.
Yenimis says the initiative is not only about livelihoods, but also about peace building. By creating economic opportunities, the mission aims to reduce violence, strengthen protection of civilians, and help communities move away from cycles of conflict. In a country facing immense political, security, and economic challenges, these small businesses are becoming a lifeline and a foundation for a more stable and hopeful future for the people of Unity State. Joy Kiruki Juma, CGTN.
Let's turn to Togo's capital, Lomé, where a high-level summit focused on bringing peace to the Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo and the Great Lakes region is being held. Organizers say the summit's goal is to accelerate the implementation of a peace deal between the DRC and Rwanda that was signed last year. The summit is being chaired by Togolese President Faure Gnassingbé, who was appointed mediator by the African Union in preparation for the summit. In preparation for the summit, Gnassingbé earlier visited Kinshasa to consult Congolese leaders. African leaders say they want to move beyond rhetoric, strengthen regional security efforts, and inject new life into the struggling peace process. The security crisis in the eastern DRC remains one of Africa's most complex, with armed groups, displacement, and cross-border tensions destabilizing the entire Great Lakes region. For African leaders, peace in the DRC is inseparable from broader regional security.
The high-level meeting comes at a critical moment. We are no longer merely issuing renowned diagnoses. We are no longer just making statements that overlap without always reinforcing each other. The situation in the Democratic Republic of the Congo and the Great Lakes region compels us to act with coherence. Recent efforts have helped maintain an active political space. This is an important achievement. Africa must not fail in its mission of peace. The challenge is first and foremost to establish the conditions for a lasting peace in connection with the ceasefire and enforcement teams and in the Great Lakes region. It is also a question of the political maturity of Africa action in addressing the continent's security and stability challenges.
As 2026 approaches the end of its first month, the 2025 Global Terrorism Index has delivered a worrying message that Africa remains the world's most affected region by extremist violence. Why has terrorism been so hard to defeat on the continent is the question. Enoch Sokolia reports, and some experts believe it's down to a lack of mutual trust among African governments.
The Sahel, the Lectured Basin, the Horn of Africa, Central Africa, and Cabo Delgado in northern Mozambique are terrorism hotspots on the African continent. According to the 2025 Global Terrorism Index, these regions continue to face a deadly mix of political instability, weak governance, and competition over natural resources. Experts say such factors give extremist groups space to grow.
If you also narrow it down to the weak security sector governance, especially where we see heavy-handedness by security forces, poor judicial elements, so they capitalize on that. use it as a basis for recruitment. We can also bring in the cybersecurity component, where because of the weak framework guiding the usage of the cyberspace, especially cyber accountability, the threat elements capitalize on that and use it as a basis for recruitment, unfortunately.
The Global Terrorism Index uses a 5-year weighted average of attacks, death, injuries and kidnappings to rank how badly countries are affected. Burkina Faso, Mali and Nigeria lead the list of the 10 African countries most affected by terrorism and extreme violence. Kabir Adamu says these countries appear again and again because the conditions that allow terrorism to survive haven't changed. Nigeria and Cameroon continue to battle Boko Haram and the Islamic State in West Africa province. In late 2025, the U.S. carried out airstrikes against ISIS and Boko Haram targets in Nigeria, showing global concern over the threat. In Somalia, Al-Shabaab remains active and still carries out deadly attacks despite years of military pressure. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, armed groups finance terror through gold, cobalt and coltan, turning natural resources into engines of violence. In Mozambique, an Islamist insurgency in Cabo Delgado continues to disrupt gas projects and trade routes. Experts warn that such widespread violence is helping to feed much larger conflicts, such as the one in Sudan. Despite international appeals to stop the export of weapons into the country, it continues to happen.
Weapons are being ferried into Sudan. One of the things we tried to do is to monitor the prices of the weapons, guns, for instance, that were brought into Sudan. So at a point, an AK-47, for instance, will be selling for about $1,500, $1,800 US dollars. But it reached a point where it was going for as low as $100 in certain parts of the Sudan. And so, of course, that means these threat elements will have access to more weapons.
Adamu says these groups will also have access to expertise on the usage of these weapons and people exposed to war strategy who for one reason to another cannot be integrated back into society. Efforts to curtail extremism in Africa are yet to yield desired results. Joint military operations and foreign interventions have fallen short of expectations, and Adamu understands where the problem could be.
If you create a web of the linkages between various countries, you would now come to a conclusion where cooperation between them become extremely difficult. So Niger, for instance, will not cooperate with Nigeria at the moment because Nigeria is cooperating with France. Benin, as an example, will not cooperate with Niger because of its relationship, for instance, with France and Niger's relationship with Russia. So that web of interconnectivity between African countries and some of the superpowers is also affecting their own common relationship.
And the impact of these failures have been devastating. People have been killed and displaced, economies have been destroyed, and countries left trapped in cycles of poverty. The 2025 Global Terrorism Index shows Africa carries the heaviest burden of extremist violence, but it is also a reminder that terrorism thrives where opportunity fails and governance collapses. Ending it means fixing more than security. It means fixing the state itself. Enoxicoli, CGTN.
Time now for our business segment. Here are the headlines. Coming up, the European Union and Mercosur bloc of South American nations sign a landmark free trade agreement. And we'll see how Egypt is looking to attract more Chinese tourists. Well, welcome into our business segment. The European Union and the Southern Common Market, a South American economic bloc known as Mercosur, have signed a historic free trade agreement. The deal, a quarter of a century in the making, was finalized on Saturday in Paraguay's capital, Asunción. As the EU's largest trade accord to date, it covers a population of about 700 million and will eliminate around $4.65 billion in annual duties on EU exports. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen says the deal sends a strong message in favor of fair trade and long-term economic cooperation. EU exports to Mercosur mainly include machinery, chemical products, and transport equipment, while Mercosur's exports are largely agricultural goods, minerals, and forestry products. The deal is awaiting approval from the European Parliament and 4 of Mercosur's member states: Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay, and Uruguay. More Chinese travelers are expected to go to overseas this year. One of the countries looking to cash in on this trend is Egypt. The North African country has a rich and storied history, one which sees many parallels with China. For more on this, CGTN's Huang Fei spoke with the CEO of the Egyptian Tourism Authority. Ahmed Youssef described his agency's efforts to make the country more user-friendly for Chinese travelers. Let's take a look.
This year we are celebrating 70 years of relationships between both countries. I believe we have a fantastic relationship when it comes to trade, economy, industry, political things, and tourism is a little bit behind all that.
People, when they think about Egypt, they only think about the Caribbean. We have much more to offer.
During major holiday seasons, the Spring Festival being the most important one for China, we often see record numbers in terms of tourists and spending. How important is the Chinese market for Egypt right now?
Last year we have achieved 360,000 tourists visiting Egypt, and our aspiration is to reach 1 million at least a year. It is not about having more money out of tourism. For me, having connection between Chinese travelers and Egyptian people is very important to keep the fantastic relationship going on. And when I was so young, I used to have a Kung Fu training. For me, it's a mission to have this kind of intercultural exchange between both countries.
When people try to decide where they go for holiday, convenience really do matter. How easy is it for Chinese tourists to travel to Egypt right now?
China is one of the countries where you can get your visa online or upon arrival. And now we are having almost 35 flights a week between Chinese carriers and Egyptian carriers. 4 or 5 companies now operate between both countries. So we are in talk with the airline carriers, and we want to engage co-marketing activities with them to make sure that their planes are always full. We are talking also with our Egyptian parties in Egypt to make sure that we provide Chinese cuisine in hotels in Egypt, Chinese signage in different places, to make sure that the country is user-friendly for Chinese travelers.
Many Chinese travelers do worry about scams in Egypt, vendors charging unreasonable prices, or worried about their personal safety in general. How would you address these concerns about safety?
We rely on awareness and social media, but let me tell you, sometimes it's an exaggeration. 86% of people visiting Egypt overall comes with a 4 or 5 stars rating of happiness. We do our parts when it comes to law enforcement and looking for the quality of goods and the practice of different merchandisers. I believe the biggest challenge today is the demand for Egypt globally is much more than the supply that we have. Our strategy currently is doubling the hotel rooms capacity and doubling the airlines coming to Egypt. If you haven't been to Egypt yet, you are missing much.
Welcome into Sport on Africa Live with me, Richard and Todd. Let's talk a bit of football. Just over 4 weeks after the tournament kicked off on a very rainy night in Rabat, the host Morocco returned to the scene of that very nervy 2-0 win over the Comores with a chance to win their first AFCON in nearly 50 years. In tonight's finals, the Atlas Lions face an experienced Senegal team who have taken care of business very impressively on their side of the draw, and Rabat is ready for the biggest night it's seen in years, and one which could immortalize the Moroccans if Captain Ashraf Hakimi lifts the new AFCON trophy. CGTN's Sadiq Shaban has more.
The 2025 Africa Cup of Nations has brought out the best of the country's young population, most of whom have never seen Morocco win the tournament at home. The 1988 Africa Cup of Nations finals in the North African Kingdom involved only 8 teams, and Morocco didn't even feature in that final.
I think it's going to be a win, maybe 3-1, 2-1, but for sure we're winning and we're going to forever play for our country.
It's a very interesting final. The best 2 teams of Africa will play to each other, but inshallah we play in our own country, so I think we will win. It will be 2-0 for Morocco, but yeah, it will be a difficult match, but yeah, we have the crowd, we have the supporters, so all the best for both teams, but I think Morocco will win with 2-0.
Morocco just became the 15th host nation to reach the AFCON finals in the tournament's history. It's just 4 years after the Atlas Lions made history as the first African team to reach the semi-finals of the FIFA World Cup. Meanwhile, Senegal stands between them and glory, and ahead of Sunday's final, both teams have declared their readiness for it.
We head into the final match knowing it's going to be the most difficult one. Senegal are one of the best teams, not only in Africa, but in the world. They have a brilliant coach and amazing players. This is their 3rd final in the last 4 editions, so that speaks volumes. But I think this is great for Africa, that the 2 best-ranked teams are facing each other in the final.
We are expecting a very difficult match on Sunday against a very talented Moroccan team. We know they will cause us many problems, but it will not be an easy match for either side. We are confident with our game plan, and we are determined to give everything to take the trophy back to Senegal.
And in Senegal, public viewing areas have been set up for thousands of supporters to watch the gold medal showdown. The West Africans are optimistic that the Lions of Teranga will deliver their 2nd title on Sunday.
During the match, I was a bit stressed, but I had hope that we would win. Now we are happy because Sadio Mane has honored us. The cup will come to Senegal by force, God willing.
Throughout the tournament, I had so much confidence because when you look at our players, you know they are determined. They are here for football, and I'm confident that the cup will come back to us, God willing.
The venue of the final match has now been spruced up, watered, and the surface well laid out for what promises to be a battle of a generation. The African Football Body says its most experienced referees will handle the decider, assuring that the video assistant referee will also be equally up to the task. The Prince Moulay Stadium here in Rabat will be the theatre of dreams when Senegal and Morocco meet in the final of the Africa Cup of Nations for the very first time in history. This will be Senegal's 4th final and their 2nd in 5 years, but it will be Morocco's 1st in 22 years. And on paper, the Moroccans look stronger with better head-to-head numbers, but Senegal's ruthless ambition in this competition could count for something in the final. Sadiq Shaban in Rabat, Morocco.
Let's now take a brief look at how the 2021 champions Senegal and host Morocco got to the finals. We now cross live to Rabat, where our reporter Sadiq Shaban, who has been covering the climax of the 2025 AFCON, joins us for more on the tournament and the finals. Sadiq Shaban, welcome to Africa Live. Thank you for taking time to speak to us. First and foremost, Sadiq, I got to ask you, how did you get to Morocco without me?
Richard, I must apologize to you really for that. It was unprecedented, Richard. I promise next time this AFCON is played, you will be with us and part of the CGTN coverage. Look, it's coming to East Africa, so rest assured we're going to have you on board. Richard, look, it's lull before the storm, if you will, here. Just a few hours before the final, and this country is all set for that final that is coming up. Senegal against hosts Morocco. That cracker will happen in just a stadium. We're within the precincts of that stadium. Overnight, the Confederation of African Football has assured all fans, and particularly Senegal, that the complaints they had raised earlier about not having enough security and protocol in place, to receive the team when they came into Rabat from Tangier will be addressed. And CAF has assured that all the teams will enjoy level playing field and fairness in this competition. So all is set, Richard. The mood here is ecstatic, and we cannot wait for that final in the evening.
All right, Sadiq, let's talk about Senegal. Senegal are in their third finals in 4 tournaments. How do you rate their chances against the host in front of a partisan crowd tonight?
Well, the Lions of Teranga have had a rather poor record in the Africa Cup of Nations, despite such a big name in African football, and they have been to FIFA World Cup on a number of occasions, but they have faltered in the Africa Cup of Nations. This time, Papa Fo, the coach, has lined up his best players. Sadio Mane has been tasked to deliver that AFCON trophy. He says it's going to be his last AFCON final. He's going to retire from African football after this. So Senegal are putting their best men forward. They say they have no injury crisis. The team is focused, and they do have hundreds of traveling fans. Would you believe it? They have accompanied them from Senegal. And also, Richard, Senegal has the biggest media delegation following the team. They have about 80 journalists just covering the team. Surely that should count for something, as we've said. And they have been very resilient in this competition, drawing, during the group stage. But Senegal have never lost focus, and they want their second title tonight here in Morocco.
All right. Now, Sadiq, CAF President Patrice Motsepe has called this the most successful AFCON ever. To that, you say what? And from your view on the ground, has it lived up to that claim?
Richard, if organizing the Africa Cup of Nations deserved a trophy, then Morocco has already won this tournament. Morocco has created the best ambience for this competition. The transportation, logistics, media operations from like where we are, it's world class. The fans have had tickets available to them, electronically, online in good time, and tickets have been snapped up. Some like the tickets for the final sold out a long time ago. Morocco has gone out of its place to renovate stadia as they eye 2030 FIFA World Cup, which will be co-hosted also in this country. So from stadia, logistic, transportation, security, anything you would wish to have to host a successful event, Morocco has gone over and above that. And Richard, in the press conference yesterday, there was a fear among journalists, and this was communicated to CAF, that the future and subsequent hosts of AFCON may not do a better job in hosting AFCON the way Morocco has. So unless perhaps Kenya, Uganda and Tanzania, the next co-host, really live up to the billing, many people will remember this one as having been the best AFCON in generation. And also, Richard, the prize money here has been the best also in the history of this competition. $10 million, Richard. I don't know what you do with that money yourself.
All right. There's a lot I can do with that money, Sadiq. Thank you so much for your insights. Enjoy the finals. Well, security has been a major focus for organizers throughout the tournament in Morocco, but tonight is expected to be at a whole new level. CAF has classified the finals match in Rabat as high risk, with particular concern over the potential for a large number of ticketless fans attempting to gain access to the stadium. The organization's head of safety and security says robust measures have been put in place to ensure all the post-match headlines will be solely about the football.
Morocco and every Moroccan would want to make it to the stadium. But the point that we would like to pass across is please make sure you have your tickets before you make it to the stadium. Without tickets, you cannot make it to the stadium. This is one. Secondly, from an operational security point of view, we are expanding the scope of our operations because we consider this as a very high-risk match, going by the fact that it is the final and we have a host nation that is also playing a final. So we understand the possible threats that could arise, which is the fact that we would possibly have some people interested in making it to the stadium, possibly without tickets, and we have put in mitigation measures to ensure this does not happen.
On Saturday, CAF President Dr. Patrice Motsepe confirmed that tonight's winner will receive $10 million in prize money. It represents a 43% increase from the 2023 edition when host Cote d'Ivoire pocketed $7 million for winning it. Let's now look at the breakdown of the prize money for this AFCON. Meanwhile, Nigeria claimed the bronze medal, beating Egypt on penalties last night in Casablanca. In a game that saw several missed chances, it ended 0-0 after 90 minutes and went straight to spot kicks. Goalkeeper Stanley Mwabali was the hero for the Super Eagles as he saved efforts from Mohamed Salah and Omar Marmoush. The win extended Nigeria's remarkable record in this particular tie at AFCON. The Super Eagles have won all 8 bronze medal games they've played in. Well, that is it for this edition of Africa Live. Remember, you can send us your feedback to the contacts on the screen and follow us on digital media platforms. For the team, I'm Richard Ntah saying thank you so much for watching, and we'll have more Africa Live coming your way in 6 hours' time. So stay tuned and stay here on CGTN.